It was just past noon when I found myself sitting at Gate C-19 at Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport. I was tired, not exhausted, just the usual kind of travel worn that comes after a long morning navigating security lines, overpriced coffee, and the low hum of constant announcements over the PA system. My backpack sat on my lap like a pillow I wasn't allowed to nap on. I stared at the screen overhead, eyes glazed, not really reading, just waiting. Then, like clockwork, a familiar chime rang out. "Attention passengers. Flight 218 to Denver has been canceled due to weather conditions." No gasp. No screams. Just a collective exhale, like an invisible weight had dropped across the terminal. A few heads tilted back in frustration. Some people quietly cursed under their breath. Me? I just sighed. Not out of anger, but out of the kind of weary acceptance that you develop over the years if you've flown more than a few times. This wasn't my first delay. It wouldn't be my last. I leaned back and thought to myself, well, life's like that sometimes. Especially at airports. People around me began to shift in their seats, murmuring softly to one another, opening flight apps on their phones. A businessman next to me shook his head and dialed someone, I assumed his assistant, with that low, irritated voice that sounds polite but drips with blame. A family across the aisle began debating whether to get lunch now or wait for more updates. The general mood was a kind of resigned patience. Nobody liked it, but we were all grown-ups here. Things happen. Flights get canceled. And then, like a storm cloud over still water, she arrived. I didn't know her name. Still don't. But we all knew who she was the moment she stepped onto the scene. The energy shifted the way it does before a thunderclap. She strutted past the line of people already queuing calmly at the desk, her heels clicking on the polished floor like warning shots. Her hair was platinum blonde, sprayed stiff and high like she was heading to a reality show audition. Oversized sunglasses hung precariously low on her nose, and her designer handbag swung with purpose. "I'm not waiting in line," she announced, more to the room than to any one person. "I'm a VIP. I paid for this flight and I expect service." I exchanged glances with a woman sitting near me. We didn't say anything, but we both raised our eyebrows. There's always one. She pushed to the front, ignoring the glares of those she passed. The gate agent, a tired-looking young man with a name tag that read Luis, tried to stay composed. "Ma'am," he said, "I understand this is frustrating, but we're helping passengers in the order they arrived." "No. You don't understand," she interrupted. "I have a business meeting in Denver and I paid for first class. Do you know who I am?" There it was, the sacred Karen incantation. The magic spell meant to unlock rules for the chosen few. Luis blinked slowly, clearly biting the inside of his cheek. "Ma'am, the weather has grounded all outbound flights. There's nothing I can do until conditions change." Karen scoffed. "Well, that's unacceptable. I didn't pay to be treated like this." I watched her, not with anger, but with a sort of curious detachment, like watching a movie unfold in real life. It was familiar, almost nostalgic in a twisted way. I wasn't even surprised. I'd seen this act before. Hell, I'd probably see it again before the year was out. There's something almost performative about it. The way she threw her arms up in exaggerated disbelief. The way she looked around, daring someone, anyone, to join her crusade. But no one did. Most of us had long since made peace with the situation. What else could we do? Scream at the clouds? For a moment, I felt a flicker of empathy. Not for her actions, but for the raw feeling underneath. Disappointment can bring out the worst in people. Some shut down. Some cry. And some, like Karen, explode outward, hoping the world will bend under the pressure of their will. Still, that didn't make her behavior okay. As I opened my airline's app to rebook the flight, I glanced up again. Karen was now demanding to see a supervisor, accusing the staff of discrimination, threatening to tweet about the injustice. Her voice echoed over the terminal. I kept my earbuds in, though I wasn't playing anything. Sometimes silence is the best filter. Couple of rows away, someone began filming. Course they did. In today's world, the phrase, "Do you know who I am?" is practically a trigger for the record button. I wondered what kind of thumbnail the video would have once it hit Twitter. Maybe her mid-shout, finger-pointed, sunglasses slipping. The internet would love this one. But I wasn't focused on that. I was focused on rebooking, finding a new flight, getting on with my day. I'd learned long ago that losing your cool never speeds things up. It only makes the moment worse. Weather doesn't care how important you think you are. Planes don't care who's shouting at the gate. I finally secured a seat on a flight leaving later that evening. It wasn't ideal, but it was something. I tucked my phone away, leaned back in my chair again, and watched as Karen continued her monologue, now with an audience that was half annoyed, half amused. I didn't need to film her. I'd already seen it all before, different day, same drama. And me? I just wanted to fly. But they, the Karens of the world, they always want a stage. She didn't stop. Karen, as if powered by pure indignation, slammed her manicured hands on the counter, her voice rising above the airport's background noise like an emergency siren. "This is unacceptable. I will sue. I have over 100,000 followers on Instagram," she shouted, as if the weather itself would clear out of sheer fear of being cancelled online. Her face was flushed, her sunglasses now pushed up on her forehead, and her bag thrown dramatically onto the counter, like a gavel to announce the start of her courtroom scene. The gate agent, bless his soul, maintained the same tired but practiced smile, the kind that comes from years of dealing with lost luggage, missed connections, and people just like her. He didn't flinch, didn't argue. He simply nodded and repeated the same line. "Ma'am, I understand your frustration, but there's nothing we can do until flights are cleared by air traffic control." And then came the moment of no return, the part of every public meltdown where the air changes when everyone quietly pulls out their phones. It started with a soft click beside me, the telltale sound of someone flipping their camera on. A few seconds later, phones were tilted up, angled toward the chaos. Nobody intervened. Nobody shouted back. Instead, the crowd became an impromptu film crew, documenting the unraveling of a stranger for an audience they couldn't yet see but knew would be watching soon enough. Karen, of course, didn't care. Or maybe she did care, maybe she thrived on the attention. She shouted into the lens of one of the nearby phones, calling it evidence. She pointed fingers, accused people of discrimination, made vague legal threats, and demanded a new flight immediately. The more attention she got, the louder she became, like a performer feeding off applause, even if the applause was just awkward stares and raised eyebrows. And then, just like that, it was over. Security arrived, not with handcuffs or tasers, but with calm voices and practiced diplomacy. They led her away gently, speaking in tones meant to de-escalate, not provoke. She stormed off, muttering under her breath about lawyers and exposure, but the scene, the real performance, was finished. Cameras slowly lowered. Conversations resumed. And the airport went back to being an airport. About 45 minutes later, while waiting for boarding on a new flight I'd managed to book for 6 p.m., I pulled out my phone and opened Twitter. Or X. Or whatever we're calling it these days. And there she was, Karen. A grainy, vertical video of her meltdown was already going viral. The caption read, entitled "VIP Screams at Gate Agent Over Weather Delay, Threatens to Sue." This is wild. Post had thousands of likes and retweets. Within seconds of refreshing, the numbers kept climbing. I watched the clip again, not because I needed to relive it, but because it felt surreal seeing something I'd witnessed with my own eyes now becoming internet currency. People in the replies were cracking jokes. Karen Airlines now boarding. Gate closed due to entitlement. Others expressed sympathy for the gate agent, calling him a saint for keeping his cool. Some even tried to identify the woman, speculating based on her voice, her bag, or her supposed influencer status. I scrolled through the comments as I bit into a pre-packaged airport sandwich. Ham and cheese. Not great, but edible. Every few posts, I chuckled quietly, drawing glances from other passengers who were probably watching the same video on their own phones. What struck me wasn't just how fast the video had spread, but how quickly it had been absorbed into the great machine of online humor, outrage, and cultural commentary. In less than an hour, a real human moment, messy, emotional, and all too familiar, had been turned into entertainment. I wasn't angry about it. I wasn't even amused in a mean-spirited way. I just found it fascinating the way a random Tuesday could spiral into something the whole internet would weigh in on. I was part of it in a way, not as the filmer, not as the subject, but as the silent witness. A background character in a story now replaying in strangers' hands across the country. Felt oddly intimate and distant at the same time. By the time they called my group to board, the video had been clipped, recaptioned, and even turned into a meme. One of my favorites showed a mock airline menu. Karen class includes unlimited outrage, zero accountability, and access to the manager's office in the sky. Made me laugh more than it probably should have. But in the quiet walk down the jet bridge, I found myself thinking about what it all meant, not in the grand moralizing way, but just as a passing reflection. Ports are strange places. They're melting pots of expectation, anxiety, hope, and exhaustion. Everyone's on their way to something, a meeting, a vacation, a funeral, a new beginning. And in those tight, stressful moments, people show you who they really are, or at least who they are when the world doesn't bend to their will. I've learned something, or at least I think I have. You can't always control what happens to you. Flights get canceled. Plans get upended. Life turns left when you were going right. But you can control how you respond. You can choose silence instead of shouting, a sigh instead of a scene. You can open your app, rebook your flight, and eat a ham sandwich while the internet argues over what entitlement means. People who scream the loudest often think they're the main character, but most of us are just trying to get through the day. We don't need the spotlight. We don't want a stage. We just want a seat on a plane. Karen will be remembered, but not for the reasons she hoped. She went viral, sure, but it wasn't glamour or power or admiration. It was chaos. It was spectacle. And the thing about viral moments is they don't last. The internet moves on. Another video, another meltdown, another Karen. So if you ever find yourself stranded at Gate C19 or anywhere else life throws you off course, take a breath. The sandwich. Let the storm pass. You may not fly on time, but at least you won't lose your calm before takeoff.